Ugh. Block, 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 double block, block. Let's talk about blocking notation. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call. Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour, please. Alrighty friends, we are back with yet another episode of the Almost Complete Guide to Stage Management. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kent, and you are watching Half Hour Call. Half Hour Call is dedicated to shining the spotlight in technical theater, so if you like how-to videos like you're watching right now, interviews with industry leaders, or general theater updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss anything. Blocking notation is one of the most important parts of a stage manager's records. This is where you'll get all of the information that you need to maintain the show as directed and keep track of the director's vision. Blocking is where the actors move on stage, so it's where people go, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and it's the stage manager's job to keep track of all of that. An accurate record of the technical blocking of the show, as well as the director's vision, is vital, especially for a long-running show. In order, here are the 3 most important factors for how you notate blocking. The number 1 most important factor is accuracy. Your blocking notation is no good if it's wrong or an old version of the show. Number 2 is speed. It may be immaculate and perfect, but if you can only get half of the scene done, it's not that helpful. Number 3 is legibility. Now this is not the same thing as neatness, because it might be sloppy, but if you and your team can read it, it's an effective blocking notation system. Now, how do you keep the entire cast's worth of blocking information in your one copy of the script? If you remember from our video about scripts, there's not a ton of room on a script page itself, so it's a good idea to have your script single-sided and write on the opposite side. A lot of stage managers find that a way to make your life easier is to have your script on the opposite page from where you write. So if you're right-handed, that means you're going to hole punch it on the opposite side than you normally would, so that you have a blank piece of paper on the right side and the script on the left side. So now we have that entire side of the paper to work with, which is where you'll probably write most of your blocking. And to match the things you write on that piece of paper with the script page, usually you'll number the blocking notes and then insert that number where it happens in the script. Personally, I like to go by 5s, so that way if I need to go back and add something, I don't have to immediately go to like 4.1. And then each new page starts that numbering system over. Otherwise, by the end of the show, you're gonna have like blocking note number 4,755, and no one's got time for that. But you probably don't want to write on the actual back of the script page for 2 reasons. Number 1, if there are any script changes to the following page, your blocking notation is going with it. Number 2, it is super annoying to try and print out specific script pages so you can replace it and make it neater. So it's going to be a lot easier if you just have a stack of pages that you can grab and replace at a moment's notice. So most stage managers will create something called a blocking slip sheet to put between each page of the script. This allows you to optimize the page for your blocking notation system and add in miniature ground plans so that you can keep spacing notes. So let's go ahead and create a slip sheet for the play that goes wrong. The first decision to make is how many ground plans do you want in a single sheet? As a general rule, more movement will warrant more ground plans. So a dance-heavy musical is going to have a lot more ground plans than a 2-person straight play. For musicals especially, some stage managers will make 2 different types of slip sheets. One with like 1 ground plan for scene work, and then one with multiple ground plans for songs with more staging. Personally, I'm a very visual person, so I would always rather have more ground plans than not enough. So my default is to do 3 ground plans along the outside edge of the blocking sheet. Decision number 2, do you want lines to write on? How big do you want them? This one's super personal and really depends on how you like to handwrite things. I like to include lines, but I make them super light so that I can just barely see them. So if I want to write on a line, I can write on a line, but if I need to ignore them to like draw a diagram or really anything, I can still ignore them. Decision number 3, do you want to add in numbers to these lines so that you don't have to number them by hand? Personally, no. I like to add the numbers by hand because that gives me the flexibility to go back and add something in between 2 blocking notes later. And now print out as many slip sheets as you have pages in your script, and then a few extra for when you need to replace pages as things change. So now that we've prepared our slip sheets, let's assemble our book. Pro tip, save time by cutting corners. Literally, if you cut the bottom right-hand corner of your pages, which for right-handed stage managers would be the bottom corner of the blocking slip sheet, for left-handed stage managers, the bottom corner of the actual script, when you grab that corner, you'll flip to the next page of the script automatically, so it'll flip 2 pages at once, instead of having to like thumb through it and figure out which 2 pages are which. This makes your life super easy because you don't have to like tape the pages together, which is a terrible idea because as soon as you tape the pages together, there will be changes that mean you need to untape them and then somehow replace the slip sheet and retape them, and it's just a whole thing. Also, it's kind of embarrassing that it took me so long to realize this, but if you assemble the pages first and then hole punch everything, your life is going to be so much easier than hole punching the script, then hole punching your blocking slip sheets and putting them into your binder one by one. Now that our book is assembled, it's time to notate. Guess what I'm about to say? That's right, no 2 stage managers take blocking notation in the same way. If you ask 100 different stage managers, you'll get 100 different answers. It's a very personalized system to every stage manager, and it is not standardized, and anyone trying to tell you that it is standardized is not correct. That said, here are a few things that are generally accepted to be correct, or at least you should know about so that if you're reading someone else's blocking notation, you can decipher these things. Number 1, abbreviations for character names are usually 2 letters and are kind of like the abbreviations for the state, where it's whatever 2 letters from the state's name that you need so that you know which state it is. Similarly, ensemble members will often be notated with their actual name, so their initials. So if I was an ensemble member, it would be KC. Generally speaking, someone's actual name is going to be a lot easier to remember than their track number, and plus, as we're working to incorporate more gender-inclusive language, having someone listed as man 1, woman 1 might not be the best choice. Everyone agrees that X means cross, and if you're working on a proscenium show, everyone agrees on the stage directions being stage left, stage right, upstage, downstage, all of that jazz. But what if it's not a proscenium theater? Thrust and in the round stages are a lot more complicated to notate because there's no traditional downstage or upstage. Try to find out what the theater already uses to describe these spaces, so that way everyone's speaking the same language. Some common options are to visualize the stage like a compass rose, so you could write north, south, east, and west, or you could visualize it like a clock face, so you would have like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and so on and so forth. Speaking of adapting to what the theater already uses, you should probably do the same thing when deciding what to call certain entrances and exits. So if everyone at the theater refers to something as the alcove, if you incorporate that into your paperwork, they know exactly what you're talking about. And in production meetings, it can be helpful to pay attention to how the director and scenic designer refer to the set. So that way, when you notate something occurs on the platform, you know that that's different than on the bridge, and that's different than on the staircase. If the theater you're working at doesn't have established names for entrances and there's nothing really unique about them, you can simply use L1, L2, L3 for stage left, and R1, R2, R3 for stage right, respectively, starting at the most downstage entrance being R1, moving upstage until you get to all the entrances being covered. This is a lot of information. Hit that like button if you're still with me. So here's where things begin to get divisive. In my opinion, if you or a member of your team need a key to read your own blocking notation, you're doing it wrong. If your system isn't intuitive, change the system. The exception to this would be like super large cast shows where you need to keep track of those initials that you've created for characters and actor names until you get to learn it better. Sometimes you'll see blocking notation that looks like hieroglyphics, and I'm just like, why? Why are you making this more complicated than you need to? But how do you find a system that works for you? My advice is you need to get out of your own way. Here's how to do that. Do an exercise like I'm about to do, where you're taking blocking notation that is too complicated and way too fast to get it all done in one go. And yes, you are supposed to fail miserably. If you don't fail miserably, you didn't pick an example that's complex enough. Once you're done, look at your paper. What system came to you naturally? And then take that, clarify it, and improve that system because that's the way that your brain works. So that's going to be the most intuitive for you. Sort of like when you lose your keys, always put it back in the first place that you looked, or when you forget a password to a website, when you finally go and change it to the first thing you guessed because that's where your brain is going to go next time. This way, instead of working against your brain by creating some kind of really complex system, you're working with your brain so that you won't have to think about that as much and you can focus on what is really important, which is the blocking that's happening in front of you. But establishing your blocking notation system is only half the battle. You also have to figure out your workflow to get it as efficient as possible. For example, if you're expecting a lot of changes from your director, which is probably all directors. One solution might be to have multiple pen colors, then each time you go through the scene that day to switch pen colors, so that way at the end of the day you have every version that you were doing, but you also know exactly which notes are from which version. And when things change, don't throw out the old blocking sheet. Just put a new blocking slip sheet in front of it. The cut corners will still make it just as easy to flip, but you won't lose the old version. Sometimes the director's going to turn to you and go, you know what? I liked what we had yesterday better. What did I tell them to do yesterday? And if you threw that away, good luck. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching. As I was making this, I realized it was going to be way too much information to cover in a single video, so please do me a huge favor and like and subscribe for part 2. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call. This snazzy feathered production assistant, as well as other cool stage management merchandise, is now available at kentjamescollins.com/store. Link in the description below.